before we get on with the review, I'm cutting this in because I forgot. I forgot something, which is this, your arch. A lot of you think you need an arch support. You got flat feet. That's what happened to me. I had corrective shoes since I started walking. I had little braces on my legs. I had these shoes with springs in them. When you step, they'd spin your feet out because I'm pigeon-toed. I had a lot of issues growing up. I tore my ligaments all the time. A lot of foot issues. So I always had these kooky shoes. The doctor told me to wear a boot with a heel. And so I had flat feet, basically. You know, I had enough of an arch where I still got into the Marine Corps somehow. But my feet got flatter over the years. And ever since going back to, or excuse me, going to these barefoot shoes that have no arch at all, it's just flat. So it's close to being barefoot as possible. My feet now have a very healthy high arch. Never had one before, now it's there. And I've spoken to a lot of my friends about this when I tell them what barefoot shoes are, and they're like, no, I got flat feet, I need the arch support. They've convinced us that we need arch supports. I was wearing boots, work boots, where the toes were too narrow, they had a heel rise, and I was wearing, they either came with a nice arch support or I was putting insoles in that had arch supports. Here's the thing, when you wear a shoe that's not a barefoot shoe, big thick leather shoe with a high arch and everything else, that's not flexible, you are basically wearing a cast on your foot. So your feet don't move and manipulate the way they're supposed to. You got 126 bones. No, you don't. You got 26 bones in your feet, in your foot. And your feet are designed to be, you know, moving. And that's what barefoot shoes do for you. They allow your feet to act as barefoot as possible while still being protected. I just wanted to throw that out there. You think you need the arch support and everything else, but going to barefoot shoes did it for me. Likely, it will develop an arch in your foot. All right? Now you know. Enjoy the rest of this. There they are. There they are. Today, I think it's pretty much, we're spot on 6 months. This is my 6-month review of this pair of Broadwinger boots. This pair of Broadwinger boots is not like your pair of Broadwinger boots. I've done a few things on these myself. I had Chris do some different things on these boots. They're pretty dirty, which is why I have this here. This is an old vintage Tom McCann suede brush. I've had this, and shoehorn. I've had this since the 1980s. That was for my Ugg boots, which this product here, or something like it, I think we used Scotchgard back in the day for a suede, like a rough out. Anything I get that has that, I use this on it or something like it to waterproof them. Keeping in mind, these Broadwingers are made out of very thick bison hide. As a matter of fact, it's the same bison hide I've been making my watch bands out of. This is a Seiko, what they call the land tortoise, its nickname, and that's on the bison hide lined in calf skin. We're another Seiko here, but we'll stick with this. I want to peel the paint off of these. I've been wearing them lately, and I've been painting, and I haven't been covering them up, which is not smart. But you know, it's easy enough to kind of scrape, should be easy enough to scrape this off here. Probably shouldn't be using such a sharp edge. But just to recap why I went with, should have thought ahead and had something better to do that with. But anyhow, I was having foot issues after years of wearing the wrong boots. And I'm going to put links below. If you don't see them right now, when I get home, I'll put them in. To my other Broadwinger barefoot boot videos, right? Just so you can recap yourself. We'll try to keep this one relatively short because I just want to mainly show the wear after 6 months. I'm getting a little bit of a heel right here where that is wearing out from excess. But by the way, when I say I've worn these every day for 6 months, I'm not going to an office and sitting down. These are getting wear. The entire time I'm wearing them, I'm standing in them, walking in them, climbing in them, everything. I've been up in the mountains with them. I've been out in the desert with them. Mostly I'm wearing them to work, all sorts of different stuff. I'm on the concrete flooring here. which we're going to bring out my first pair in a moment and talk about those as well. But this is absolutely my favorite pair of shoes. This is the most comfortable pair of shoes I've ever owned. It is like as close as you can get to being barefoot. And I'm going to talk to you about some things that go against the grain a little bit when it comes to the barefoot shoe thing. And Chris, who's an awesome guy. Let's talk about Chris for a minute. I like this guy. I think Chris, he has a hard time, I think, because he's such an affable fellow that I think he probably becomes pals with every single person he makes a pair of boots for. Problem with that is, like, he has to talk a lot. I think that might hurt him on his time sometimes, but he really wants to do the best job he can for you, right? And he's a true artisan, as I am, because we both work for ourselves. We're both artisans, and we're very good at what we do, each of us. That puts us in this mindset with one another that we really understand one another. So it's great. And because I come from a world of inventing things in my mind and using my hands to put together something that somebody's like, here, take my money. That's another thing. And I can communicate with him on a level where we're both speaking the same language. I suspect, well, I know for a fact it's true, because there are, like, I have clients just like he does that they can't see it in their minds. They need to see it in person. So if you call Chris to get a pair of boots made, there's going to be a lot of conversation. He's going to try to get every detail out of you that you want, because he puts so much time into his product, hand stitching, leather. I mean, this is 9-10 ounce, really thick bison hide. I don't know if you've ever hand stitched leather before. I don't know if you've ever hand stitched super thick 9 to 10 ounce bison hide. It ain't easy. It takes a lot of time. And so, he wants to make sure he gets it right for you the first time. And he has a standard way of doing things, and as far as like his mindset on the barefoot shoe movement. Okay, so just to recap that part of it, if you're here, it's your first time, you're just looking into barefoot shoes. What denotes a barefoot shoe? Wide toe box, no arch support or anything else, zero rise. Your heel is not higher than the toe part. That's pretty much it. And as thin of a sole as possible, so that the bottoms of your feet can feel the ground under you. Now, this is a work boot. So it was interesting with Chris, because he's been making these for a lot of people who do hard work. They're out on farms, ranches. He's got a guy that hiked Nepal in a pair of these. So he's used to that. I was coming at him from the standpoint of being on concrete all day. And so the first pair I ordered from him, I like them. They're fine. We're going to talk about those in a moment. But after wearing them for a while on the concrete, my feet hurt. The bottoms of my feet were hurting. So I knew that I needed a layer of this Moreflex or New Flex or whatever they call it. That's that cushiony kind of tan color thing you see here. What you see is a really thick piece of leather. Then you see the tan color. That's the cushy part. And then there's a Vibram sole on here. This has been pretty good, but you can see it is wearing out already in 6 months. So keep in mind now. Oh, you know what you can also see is the pattern of my foot, kind of. Where it wears down there versus, the rest of the sole. You can see that's not worn down. This takes the shape of, you might be able to see that on camera. I don't know what you can see here. But you should be able to see that this is taking, you can see the shape of the foot. The bottom of the sole, It's pretty cool. So, very happy with them. I had Chris do a few things to these that he had never done before. I was adamant about doing it, which the number one thing is the toe protector. So, not just his boots, but other boots I've seen, if they're not reinforced or double layered, the toe folds down. It's an aesthetic thing for me, mainly. I just don't like the way it looks. But the other thing is I'm working with lumber all day, and sometimes I bounce something on my toe or whatever. I'm working hard in these things. I'm up on roofs, all kinds of stuff. So I didn't want to wear through it as well. Now, the first pair, I had him put an exterior toe cap on it, which was fine. I should have went in a different direction with that as far as the aesthetic appeal of it. We'll talk about that in a moment. So this time I asked him if he could do the reinforcement on the inside, and he did. And I've had no problems with this. I'm very happy. I'm very happy with the way that they look on top of the way that they feel. They're just super comfortable. All-day shoes. The kilties are something I've been doing. The kiltie is this piece of material here. It goes between the tongue and the laces. It's just an extra layer, so when you cinch down your laces, you're not having this the lace cut into the top of your foot. It's very comfortable. I want to show you something. Well, maybe we'll get to this at the end. I've been doing them this way for years. The only issue with it is they slide from side to side. And recently I saw a design where it's narrow at the bottom, but then it's round up here, the kiltie. And so that will lock in here and not move side to side. So I'm going to make a new set of them in that design. The other thing I had Chris do for me was add this reinforcement piece. Now this is not the piece he sewed on here. This is a piece I put on. He did a great job with it. Problem was he had these stitched so that they were all the way stitched up here. And the issue with that is, and you may have seen it in the very beginning of the video, is I push my socks down, and something they taught us in the military with our combat boots, like if you're running in sand and all that, like if you're wearing a pair of shorts, is when you take your sock and you pull it down and you want to roll the sock down over the perimeter of the top of the boot, keep it tight there, and any debris, sand, small rocks, things like that get deflected away by the sock. They don't get into the boot. And so when this was sewn up all the way here, I couldn't get that to happen. So what I did myself was I cut this free and I made my own reinforcement, a much larger piece, and I hand stitched all that. And I had to literally use a drill to drill through the thickness of this, because this right here, that's got to be 5/8 of an inch thick from inside here to here. I went all the way through on that, all hand stitched. And the neat thing about that was you can see the work that Chris did himself with the hand stitching on the back of this spine here. Does a phenomenal job. And I really stitched the hell out of this. This is not going to pull out. So that's my own improvement. Now, if you order a pair of these from Chris and you want that inner toe protector and you want him to do something like this, that's going to add a significant cost to the price already, which is pretty significant. I think they're up to at least $1,500 now. For these are handmade custom boots. He will call you and do a video call with you, and he's going to send you a kit to measure your feet the way he needs you to measure them. It's different from any other place you've ever had them done before. And he makes a custom last that is your foot, that he has. Anytime you need another pair of boots made for him or whatever, he makes it off of that last. So keep that in mind. These are not for everybody. Now, I've been getting a lot of notes on my other videos, my Broadwinger Barefoot Minimalist Work Boot videos. That's a crazy title, right? And the one dig is, oh, it's too much money. So let me address that. It's a lot of money. If you're used to paying less than $100 for a pair of work boots and you go through a pair every year or every 6 to 8 months, you wear them down and you got to get a new pair, or they blow out. You know the problems you're having with cheaper boots. Add that up. How much money you're going to spend in 10 years on boots. And then the other thing is the people that, like me, in the past, I was spending $200 to $500 on boots. I thought were good work boots, which were basically screwing my feet up because my toes were being squeezed. And I tried it all. I tried wides. The problem with buying wides a lot of the time is they're actually not much wider here. They just seem to have more volume. And my foot is not tall. It's wide. So that never really worked for me. And again, the heel rise was a problem. You know, the combination of having your heel higher and a tighter toe is your foot's being forced down. And so I developed this bunion on this foot here, on my right foot. I'm calling it a bunion. It was, you know, your first metatarsal. And a few years ago, it was just red and inflamed and extremely painful. So I started doing my own therapy, which was very, very painful. Very painful. And it took the better part of a year to the point where I could start actually bending it, but still not without pain. and I was working on it. I had this machine I hooked up to it, that these electrodes, it shoots the electricity around everything, and that helped a lot. And I got it to the point where I could crack the first that first joint underneath your toenail there. You know, I could pop that after a while, a year and a half or so. And after wearing these, I went to Barefoot shoes at the same time, and I was trying sneakers and all kinds of stuff, but the sneakers were still too tight. Getting to these now, this joint now, it's still larger than the other foot, but it's no longer inflamed, and I can now grab my toe and pull it, and I can pop that first metatarsal, and I can bend the toe with no pain. And it's really interesting because if I pinch my toe and pull on it and pull it back, there's some, I guess there was like a calcium buildup in that joint. I'm trying to break it free. So I'm doing things with my own toe that most people would not do. They'd be in way too much pain. They'd have to go to a doctor and get surgery and everything else. And I'm breaking things inside my joint on purpose. Like I can feel it and it hurts. But I couldn't do that for a long time. And these things have just changed my life for the better. I'm telling you. That's just my personal experience. Just wanted to point out that with this rough out, if you just kind of hit the suede with a brush like this, you'll knock all the dust out of them and clean them up, and you can make them. You could even put these in some cool soapy water if you want and do this. Let them dry out and then hit them with a suede brush again, and you can get them to look like new all over again. And of course, another thing you could do with these, if you really want to, is you could oil this. Of course, it would take away the light color. It would be a much darker color, and it would look more like regular leather, and you'd have to keep reapplying that. I don't see the need to do it. It's an option. It's what they did in the military back in the day. You can see this area here where the laces have been. If I was to spend a little time on that, roughing these up, you can get that to kind of get back to where you raise the grain on it again. So it's kind of cool. It's easy, to me, that's easy upkeep, you know. Let me show you something real quick. I think I got to without pausing that. I have... hang on a second. Hang on 1 second. This isn't what I wanted, but it'll work. This is just a brass brush. This is, Harbor Freight. Same thing. If you go ahead and do that, you can get these suckers to clean up pretty good. And again, I can scrape that paint off, and I can have these things looking pretty new. And keep in mind, all I'm doing here is just basically knocking the dust out of them and raising the fibers of that. We'll just call it suede, right? It's the rough out. I shouldn't be doing this right now. I'm a little under the weather, I think, from dust. But you can see how easily that cleans up. So to me, that's awesome. Easy maintenance. I can make them look pretty new again real fast. Now, some of you are going, wait a second, 6 months and the heel's already wearing in. Yeah, this Vibram sole, I let Chris select this one for me. I'm still experimenting through him. It's fine. That's 6 months of constant everyday use. You have to keep that in mind. And the beauty of these boots is they can be resold by anybody. You can go to any boot place or any shoe guy. They can peel this off, and they can glue down a new layer of this and another Vibram sole or any other sole that you want. They're easily repairable. And these things are sewn so well. This material is so thick. If you take care of these, if you don't just let it beat them up and let them dry out and crack and everything else, which, by the way, the rough out, I think, would probably last longer as well. Compared to when you have the smooth out and you get the cracks and everything else. Because this, I don't see how this cracks like this. But I should have these, and I think I will have them for the rest of my life. And I'm probably going to go through a sole every year or so. And if you send it to Chris, I think it's $15 for him to resole them. I don't know what your local shoe guy will charge you, but it's going to be in that range, depending on the materials. So you spend the money on these, they're made for your foot, and you can have them for the rest of your life. So as much money as you think you're spending, you're like, I don't know, you're in the long run, you're going to save money. 5 years from now, this pair of boots compared to how many pairs of boots are you going to buy in that amount of time. If you're the guy like me where you're hard on your footwear, these things are going to pay for themselves. So 10 years, 20 years from now, I know what I'm talking about because I had a pair of Danners that I bought in the late 80s, early 90s. They were called the Job Boss boot. Super thick leather, very hard to break in. I only recently threw them away just because they were eating up too much space in my closet. But I had those boots, let's say 1992. So do the math, man, right? 32 years I had those boots. So I can easily have these until I die. So, you know. Now, the only issue I would say with this particular material, and I wanted to show this to Chris, so I guess he gets to see this now, is you see how thick this is here? But you see how this is squished down here? That's because oftentimes I'm standing at the table, and this didn't rebound on me. And what happened was, with this pair, was I was having an Achilles issue. Like, it was hyperextended. And it hurt me with my training as far as working out. Like, it got to be painful. So even though these don't have a heel rise, to compensate for the thickness difference between here and here, which you can see on the camera, you can see this is a little bit thinner than what this is now. I'm talking about the tan layer. You can see that. What I did was, underneath the cork, you know what? Maybe I can pull this up for you and take one out. Chris will give you an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch, whatever you ask him for, insole for this thing. And underneath that on the heel, what I did was I took one of those Spenco green soles. I don't know if I'll be able to get this out of here. Usually I have a different can opener knife that I use, the one with the point. Oh, I think I'm getting it. I should have thought about this first. There we go. So I made this. Now, I wouldn't call this a heel rise, okay? It's very thin. It's about 1/8 of an inch, and you can pinch it to nothing, all right? But this little thing that I put underneath the cork in the heel took care of that issue, and I no longer have any issues with my Achilles tendon being overly strained where it was painful. And it took a while for that to get better, but now I can get in the push-up position and things like that, start doing my burpees again and all that. But it did hurt me for a while. I mentioned it to Chris because, yeah, you can definitely see it on this boot. You can see how thick this is here, and then how it got thinner here and stayed there. So I spoke with Chris about it. I don't think most people are having this issue. I think most of the people he's making these boots for aren't just standing in one spot on concrete like I do when I'm working a machine all day long or something like that, the table saw, whatever, at the bench. And I don't know how, this is just me thinking out loud. I'm not saying I'm right about this, but it seems like maybe this material is available in different densities as far as, you know what I'm saying, like how cushy it is when you squeeze it. And if you could get a version of it that was just slightly denser, and you did it where you glued them together with a seam right here. So this is the softer part, and then this is the slightly denser part. Maybe that would rebound better and you wouldn't need to do what I just showed you. It's just a thought. I might be the only person having the issue. It may not apply to anybody else on the planet. And I've already solved my own issue. So there's that. What else can I tell you about these? I don't know, man. I'm very, 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 very pleased. They're my favorite shoes, like I said. And I like the look of them, too. Even with the wide toe and everything else. Let me break out this other pair. I have them in the box because when we sending these back to Chris, this was the first pair. And I did something to these, which you can see. I added this top. Now, this was a 5-inch boot. This is a 6-inch boot. Now, you'll see on this boot here, there's no lace going through that top hole. That's because when I had the 5-inch boots here, stay. Good dog. So when I had this 5-inch boot, my laces from time to time would pop up over the top of the boot. And after I got the 6-inch, I decided to add this myself. This was, I used his bison hide on this because it matched, but that was very thick stuff to use. I didn't do the best job on this, but for me, it's pretty good. And now I can wrap the laces and I don't have to worry about them popping up over the top of the boot. I also did the same thing here where I cut that away. And so I have the relief here. All right. I think this is a better design. And my favorite thing about this particular boot was this sole here, which is the lawnmower tire tread. It's very flexible, right? Love the grip. I've worn these hiking. They were fantastic. But again, like I said, if I'm wearing them in the shop, it was a problem, just the pain on the bottom of my foot. So I'm going to have him take this sole off and add a layer of that, wherever they call it, New Flex, More Flex, whatever. And I would like him to put another one of these soles on it. He's kind of trying to say that I should go with the Vibram lug sole. So Chris, if you're watching this, we'll talk about it, but I still think I'd prefer going with a nice thick layer of the More Flex and this as well, which is going to be an extra thick sole. So those of you who are like really diligent about the whole, barefoot shoe thing with a super thin sole, I understand. Yeah, that's what I would prefer as well. But for a work boot, you need the extra layer. If you're just standing there all day, you just need it. So hang on one second. I got to pause this. I can hear some talking in the background. All right. Well, hopefully that won't be too distracting. It's distracting me. I gotta breaks my train of thought. But anyhow, when I send this, the other thing I was thinking about, Chris, if you're watching, I know you're gonna roll your eyes and you're never gonna want to talk to me again. I understand. I like the toe cap. Depending on what the cost is, I would consider having him take this off and replacing that with a piece of the chocolate brown with the rough out. That's the one thing I think I would have him change on this. Other than that, I love everything else. So yeah, we're going to do the thick layer of the More Flex on the bottom there and possibly change that out just so it's more monotone. Don't mind this at all. Don't mind that at all. There was a funny issue with these. They were wider than they needed to be for some reason. And in the van, they were so wide, and the Astro van where you sit, where the gas pedal to the brake pedal is so close, this was very, very close, when I was lifting my foot off the gas pedal to go to the brake pedal, sometimes this will catch on the brake pedal. So I thought about it, and I realized I had a lot of extra room here. A lot more than I needed. So we talked about it, and he made these a little bit narrower, and they're still plenty wide. For my toes. Nothing's hitting anything, and but you can actually see it. I mean, the sole itself is a solid 3/16 of an inch narrower here than what this one is. So something else to keep in mind, but these are pretty cool. So I think it's one of those funny things. Now that I have these, I don't feel like I need these, but I got them and I paid for them. So I'm going to get these dialed in correct. And I don't know what'll happen with them. With this tread, which is more of that hiker tread, you see what's happening here, I suppose I can make these the work boot and then use those for some, I'll just basically rotate them a bit. But I do like the color on these. And I suppose I can always splurge and have another version made in the brown rough out with the internal toe stiffener, everything, just to match those just in the dark brown. And it's funny, whenever Chris posts a new pair of boots where they're all smooth out, I look at those sometimes and I go, oh man, I kind of wish I had a pair of those. Because the smooth out is kind of nice if you wanted a boot to wear that's maybe a little bit dressier. So I've been thinking about that. Like, I mean, you're not going to wear them with a suit. I suppose you could, but I think about that sometimes. Like if you wanted to look a little bit nicer, maybe you can go with a smooth out. So I'm sure we'll talk to him at some point. You know, the funny thing about Chris is he's such a nice guy. You know, I actually there's no reason for me to talk to him other than we still talk from time to time just to chat about stuff. It's almost like I want to have him do something more for me just so I have an excuse to talk to him. You know, we do talk about the leather. He sent me a box of leather, and that's what I was making these bands out of. I'm out of it now. And he was going to send me more, but he did give me the warning. He's like, dude, I did you the favor, but he doesn't actually have scrap when you think about it, right? He's going to use every little bit of scrap he's got. So, Chris, thank you for sending me what you sent. If you want to send me more, believe me, I'll take it. We discussed it, but at the same time, I can't ask for it because I know what you go through. So thanks again for everything you've done. Anyhow, I'll let you go now. It's been a pretty long video. But these are the Barefoot Broadwinger work boots. You know, your Barefoot minimalist shoes, your Broadwinger Barefoot minimalist work boots. They're work boot moccasins, man. That's what this is. You can see the heel wear here. You know, I didn't wear these nowhere near as long as I've worn these, and they did start to go on me a little bit. So that's just the way I was wearing them, what I was doing in them. You know, you can see how that came down quite a bit. So not complaining, just saying that's what happens to all your shoes. But I love that lug, how deep that is. I'm really leaning towards putting this sole on there again and going with that thicker layer, more flex. But again, I did this myself. If you wanted Chris to do this, like I was saying earlier, I'm sure he's going to charge more for that. He's going to want to dress that thread that's exposed here. He's going to want to address that. And he'll do a better job than what I did. That's it. I hope you enjoyed this. And I know some of you were curious. Every once in a while I get a comment in the old videos asking me how they were holding up. So now you know. And but the main thing to know is I'm extremely happy. I don't regret spending the money at all. So I'm over the moon. I'm over the moon happy. Have a good day. Be kind to one another, and I will see you in the next one.